this is another edition of Kicking All the Way, and today we're taking it out of interviews to actually showing you a beautiful technique that is really popular now, and we'll be showing you how we decorate this gorgeous cake with wafer paper. All right, my name is Lola Ogujimi and I'm the creative director of Dainty Affairs Bakery and the host of Kicking All the Way, which is a platform specifically to educate, to inspire, and just to let you know what happens, in the cake world. So, I mean, without going too far from what we want to do, I'm just going to show you what I have in front of me. I have, yes, this cake that we've been decorating. We've done the first tier, or should I say the last tier, the mid tier, and I'll be showing you how, I turned just a covered cake with these gorgeous designs. So I will tell you a bit about this design I have in front of me. 2020, guys, everything has become so eclectic, modern, and there's just a bit of flow, airiness, and simplicity. There's a lot of architectural designs now, and things that were not allowed before or seen as a norm. Everything is just okay now. So I think this is just a beautiful time to express yourself as a cake designer. And in front of me, I have 3 designs we've been working on. We're done with this one, this black square cake on the left, and then the right hand side, I have this cake that we're still working on. And of course, this particular design that I'll be showing you how we created, and then we'll finish it up together. So what am I using for this decor? The cakes have been baked and covered in fondant, and I like to do that so that I could just prep and make things ready. In Nigeria, where we live, is very humid, and if I'm working with fondant cake with the team, we prefer like a very solid structure. I know some people outside Nigeria actually do this over the cake itself, but for here, for peace of mind, for me, my team, and of course the client, we always try to, first of all, bake the cakes, fill them, crumb coat them, allow the fondant to dry to the touch, all right, before we get on with any other decorations we'll be putting on the cake. So the style of this cake is the wafer paper, like I mentioned. It's just a flat white sheet, but it's amazing what you can do with this medium. I have come to fall in love with it so much because it's just so creative. It's just so, there's just so much you can do with it, from flowers to designs like this. You can print on it, and because it's edible, you can actually eat it. It tastes like wafer, by the way. You can also color this sheet. Like I would show you how we turn this white sheet into like different shades of white, pink, and added some pearls and all of that. So to go ahead with the design, I will be needing the following items. We need a bit of color, right? These are, this is just a combination of white pearl and pink pearl, all right, that I have poured and added some edible spirit, okay? And we use edible spirit instead of water so that it can dissolve properly, and of course, once you place it on the wafer paper, it quickly dries off. So we don't use water at all for wafer paper. It has to be either alcohol or edible spirit. And then this is also very important. This is my piping gel, and this is made in-house. We made it here at the Dainty Affairs Bakery Studio, and it's just made with lemon, corn flour, water, and yeah, that's it. And it tastes delicious too. Okay, and then of course we'll be using these beautiful molds, silicone molds. You don't have to get these, guys. You can just use any mold you have. It's about just being creative in your placements. I'm also going to need a scissors, a brush, and then of course an offset spatula. I love working with an offset spatula instead of the straight ones. And we have some royal icing here. I would rather use this to stick on the edible flowers we have made here instead of the piping gel for stability, because it dries really, really hard and secure. All right, I also have a foam, all right, just a foam we just cut into this shape. This is what we would use to dab the color over the cake. All right, another technique you could use to get this color is to use an airbrush, but I wanted this class to be relatable. It's not everyone that has airbrush in their stores, so I mean, if you have one, that's fine. We have one here because we tend to do a lot of painting, but I mean, if you just have this and a clean sponge, you are fine. All right, so now we'll begin, and I will just walk you through how we design this cake. Happy caking, guys. So here we go. We'll be using about 4 sheets of wafer paper. And like I mentioned earlier, they're just white flat sheets, and we'll create the texture and the patterns we want with them. So what I'm doing is I'm just literally ripping off from one end to the other, like so. There's no right or wrong way. I want it to look as rustic and untidy as possible. And so that I can gain much more ground, I tend to put about 3 to 4 papers on top of one another and just rip, so that, you know, it takes a shorter process. So I just go on like this until I completely rip off the entire sheets that I have in my hand. And that's the last part. So we have roughly about 20 strips of wafer paper, and I will show you how to adhere this onto the cake. Now that's the piping gel, and the piping gel acts as the glue that would help my wafer paper attach to the fondant. And then I'm just literally just going round the entire surface of the cake with my piping gel. I want to be generous with this so that the wafer paper can thoroughly stick onto the cake. Now, in the early days when I started working with wafer paper, we used to use water, but I realized that the water was just too much for the wafer paper, and so it would rip it off. So piping gel is a much better option. Gently now, just placing the piping gel all around the cake. And I tend to like to place it totally and completely, so that, you know, when I'm placing the wafer paper one after the other, I don't need to stop so often. So we begin to place the wafer paper, and this is very easy. We're literally just taking the wafer paper and applying it round the cake. And then you will notice that the portion that is ripped and untidy is the part that starts from the very top. We need the cake to look very rustic, and once you start this way and continue around the design, it ends up looking very beautiful, airy, and just very rustic. So we want to also make sure that we rip one end of the wafer paper so that it looks untidy. And then we just continue to go around, remembering to stick it onto the cake where it ends before adding another strip to it. So as we begin to place it one after the other, going around the entire cake, it's important that you leave a very short distance from the top one to the second one. You need your frills to look quite tight, and the closer they are when you are applying them one row after the other, I find the more beautiful it looks. So if you kind of make the gap too wide, it doesn't look too beautiful. So you want to make sure that you apply each row as close as possible to the other row, and then just have fun with it. Okay, there's no right or wrong way of placement. At the end of the day, it all comes together. So you take your time to close whatever gaps are a bit too wide, and then you manipulate the wafer paper. You can bend it out, fold it in. Just have fun with this process. And here we are. We've been able to place the wafer paper strips all around the cake, and it's already looking beautiful. So now I want to put in on the finishing touches. Now that's some 50-50 we've rolled. We need the elasticity of the flour paste to pair with the fondant in a 50-50 ratio so that it can dry perfectly for this purpose. So now we're going to begin to use the silicone molds to make flower designs. And then I just have a couple of silicone molds at hand that have the design that I'm looking for, and gently we place it all into the crevices very patiently, like so. And once you pop it out, it gives you the beautiful design on the silicone mold. So I'm going to take my time and make some, and then we'll begin to place it on the cake. I'm taking some of the 50-50 and making some unique flower designs. I want to make sure that it sits flush. Once it's gone in, you press and then you pop it out like so. So we make this in different shapes and sizes, and we leave them all to dry. But for the sake of this video, we've actually made some and left them to dry, because it's important it dries properly before you begin to use them. So for the next phase of this decoration, we're going to take some liquid color and then just mix them together. I have a bit of fuchsia pink and some white luster, and I mix them all together so that I can get a very light shade of luster pink. And with the foam, we begin to dip and dab. So this technique is called dipping and dabbing. Now the trick to this is to use very minimal color, because if you take too much of the liquid, it will all just roll down the sides of the cake, and we don't want that. We just want to introduce the color in a very minimal way. Okay, and then we just take it bit by bit on different portions of the cake, like so. It's okay to use an airbrush machine to actually create this type of texture on your cake, so that I could show you how versatile or how creative we can be. We don't like to kind of limit ourselves to one particular tool. We like to try out other techniques that can also allow us get the same results. And I find this dipping and dabbing works absolutely fine. So I'm just going all around the cake, just gently. I don't have any pattern in mind. I usually like to work very organically. I look at the project in front of me and creatively begin to enjoy myself and enjoy the process. So I say to you, when you do things like this, don't be too hard on yourself. Embrace even the mistakes that you make. You never know what will come out of that. Now, because we have used a luster airbrush color, you will notice that we're having the finishing of the pink. It's looking very satiny, very elegant, and I wanted this finish because we're creating a very romantic type cake theme. And there we go, all done now. Now it's time to go to the next set of decor details. Now for the next set of design, we're going to use this royal icing. And royal icing is the glue, the perfect glue to adhere usually any applied design onto your fondant cake. I'm just going to roughly spread the royal icing onto some specific areas of the cake, and then with that I begin to apply the flowers that we made earlier on. One by one, we applied these floral details onto the cake, and I try to cluster them in such a way that, it has a beautiful flow. So I use a big flower, a medium-sized flower, a much smaller flower, just clustering them up in one side, but making sure that it all goes with a particular pattern. I just use this technique and apply the flowers or the floral details onto the remaining portion of the cake. Again, there's no right or wrong way. Just simply apply them, having a pattern in mind, placing a big one, a medium-sized one, and then a much smaller one, all up in a particular section as a cluster. Once I've applied all the flowers to the portions I want, then I begin to just take the royal icing and dab to the cake as well, just to add another interesting texture. We're trying to make as many patterns as possible onto this one cake so that it can be interesting to the eye. Now, to apply the sprinkles onto the cake, it's really difficult to take the sprinkles one by one and place it onto the cake. I devised a means where we take this very dry foam, place it inside the Crisco, alright, and then dip that into the sprinkles like so. And with that, we can now add that onto the surface of the cake. Now, how beautiful is that? So what I'm doing here is just applying the sprinkles onto the portions of the royal icing I just dabbed onto the cake, so that it adheres itself without falling off. And I use this technique to apply the sprinkles around the cake. After applying the sprinkles, I really love texture, and now I'm taking some dragées in the color silver and white, and with this tweezer I would apply them onto the cake as well, like so. I find for designs like this, adding more elements that are cohesive, helps to tell a much elegant story, a much romantic story, especially with this theme of cake. So one by one, I take the tweezer and place it strategically around the cake. And already the cake is looking gorgeous. Now, to complete our cake design, we've made some sugar flowers ahead of time, and I like to call these sets of flowers sugar flowers because they're not botanically correct. So there's really no fuss. We just like to make them look as realistic as possible. And here we have the peonies, the orchids, some berries, and some filler flowers. We also have some ivies and some twigs as well. I'm just going to show you how we added this detail onto the filler flower. We took a ball of flour paste, used a wire just at the bottom. We left it to dry for at least a day. And then we use piping gel around the surface and then dip it into sugar. And that is what gives this finish that you see now. And this set of flowers will be used just to fill in spaces here and there after we've done our arrangement. Carefully now, I'm just going to arrange these sugar flowers around the cake in a beautiful, flowy and a befitting manner. Here we go. We're all done now. Our beautiful 3-tier, rustic, beautiful, airy and flowy wedding cake. A perfect modern design. Thank you for watching. Till our next video. It's bye for now.